Hi, welcome to the latest edition of Data in the Hallway. I'm joined by two CTOs, I guess. Chris Aniszczyk joining us from Austin, Texas of CNCF, and our own CTO at PingCAP, Ed Huang. He's joining us from Beijing very early in the morning, so we're definitely very global. So welcome to both of you. And we'll start with a lucky introduction, I guess. Chris, we'll start with you. Tell us like who you are, where you're located, and also tell us about the CNCF in case
Sure.
people never heard about Cloud Native Computing Foundation.
Yeah, no problem. Good to be here. Chris Aniszczyk, Chris Aniszczyk. Everyone says my last name differently.
Yeah,
I think I've just stopped. I think I've just stopped caring over the
yeah,
years at the end of the day. As long as
uh,
one of those two they work out. But yeah, I'm a CTO of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which I helped start a little over 8 years ago as kind of founding executive director, and then shifted to the CTO role because I prefer to be closer to the technology. But my kind of career started out as been an open source contributor for 25 or so years now. Started in the Linux space, was a maintainer in Gentoo, was a maintainer in Fedora back in the day. Spent a lot of my time in early career working on low level Linux and JVM internals, doing a lot of modularity for the JVM. If I don't know if Ed remembers this, but OSGI and some of this kind of crazy low level
Yeah.
stuff that I had to do, and that's kind of how I started my open source journey, and it kind of evolved into a variety of things. Started an early days open source company. I was very much passionate into cloud managed development environments. At the time, in those days, Eclipse was kind of the popular development environment, and we wanted to way to like manage that via the cloud, basically kind of what today exists as GitHub code spaces, Gitpod, etc. But we were trying to do that like 15 years ago. So I've always loved working close to developers in open source because that feedback loop is so much fun at the end of the day, even though developers sometimes are the worst customers to have. But the feedback
yeah,
loop, amazing. Like it's so
yeah,
much fun. You
Yeah.
get that feedback very quickly. And then, spent time at Red Hat a little bit, and then eventually went to Twitter, where we were kind of early pioneers in what basically now is kind of cloud native, where we were kind of open sourcing a lot of infrastructure, scaling. We couldn't really buy stuff off the shelf at that time, so we just kind of invented our own things. We helped bring Mesos out of Berkeley's AMP Lab and brought that inside Twitter and built that into probably one of the world's largest distributed infrastructure, projects before Kubernetes came around. So we open source Parquet, which is kind of very, very widely used still in storage formats, Bootstrap on the front end. So it's kind of a fun thing. I learned a lot about open source infrastructure there, and the importance for me once I left that job was I wanted to democratize a lot of this technology and make it available to the rest of the world. And then, CNCF kind of came around the same time. And obviously Google had Kubernetes, but I always had a longer term vision of cloud native is going to be more than just an orchestrator. It's the data, it's the networking, it's the storage. All that stuff also has to be available. And here we are, 8 years later. CNCF started with Kubernetes. Now we're at 180 something projects. I have to go look at the thing, covering all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff. Like we have TiKV from all y'all. We have networking stuff, storage. We're starting to get AI projects now. This whole movement of democratizing layers of open source infrastructure has definitely caught on in industry, and I'm kind of happy to play a small part in it. So that's enough me. I'm a nerd engineer at heart that's kind of tried the entrepreneurial thing for a while, and now I'm in nonprofit foundation land these days. So that's
cool,
that's who I
awesome.
am.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
can't
Awesome.
believe it's been 8 years already. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure people have seen this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of slides with logos of different projects of CNCF and 180 or so projects. It looks like a table of elements in chemistry, right? So,
Yeah.
so
No.
it's pretty amazing. So yeah, so Ed, I'll let you introduce yourself, and also if
Sure.
you can talk to us about obviously, Chris mentioned TiKV. The Chaos Mesh is another project
Mhm.
that's still
Yep.
incubating in CNCF.
Nice.
So, what were your
Yep.
thought process in terms of deciding to donate to the foundation and also to CNCF in particular? Like,
Nice. Nice. I will
yeah,
start with a quick introduction of
yeah,
myself. My name is Ed. I'm the co-founder and CTO of PingCAP. And today I'm still a very hands-on engineer. PingCAP is the company behind TiDB and TiKV. So we are a database company, and very important, I'm a big fan of open source. So basically TiDB and the TiKV is all open source. We donated this to distributed the TiKV as the distributed key value database to CNCF a couple of years ago. I believe that was that is 2017, I think. So you know, in the my just like I said, my major is distributed system. So we before PingCAP, I built a lot of open source and distributed systems. Like one of the most famous one is Codis. It is a you know, is a distributed Redis solution. It's quite popular. And while we designing TiDB, which is the open source implementation of Google Spanner and Google F1, and you know, so basically I'm a big fan of Google. So that's why in the early days we are the early adapter to Kubernetes, because it comes from, you know, the Google background. And so, and I also like the designing philosophy of a lot of Google system, which is highly decoupled different, you know, components. In TiDB, we use the separation of SQL layer and the computing as the computing layer, and the key value layer as the storage layer. So that that's the storage layer, which is TiKV. It is a transactional key value database, and then we believe that a distributed key value database with transaction or multi-row ACID semantic support will be an excellent foundation for building a lot of different distributed systems. For example, if you want to build a distributed file system, you definitely need to have a, you know, metadata storage. So at this moment, you might need a scalable metadata storage system for the metadata of the distributed file system. So that we found that it's the perfect building block for folks to, you know, to build other stuff like, you know, the super scalable system. So that we decided to contribute to, you know, the open source foundation. I think at that moment, I think CNCF is the, you know, the most promising open source foundation, and my personally is a big fan of Kubernetes. That's why we donated TiKV. And another interesting project we donated to CNCF is Chaos Mesh. Chaos Mesh is Chaos Mesh was totally another story. You know, building a distributed system is one of the most important things.
Whoops.
Especially when in the large scale system. So one of the most important approaches we applied is what we call fault injection. So we keep ingesting, you know, faults and accident to the underlying systems, like ingesting faults to file system or network, everything. So to see if the system, the database or other stuff can still be, you know, not running normally. So Chaos Mesh in the very beginning was part of our internal testing platform. We didn't even, you know, have a name for this component, and you know, like it is kind the earliest form was a combination of a lot of fault injection tools. But since at that time, we have already run all our testing infrastructure on Kubernetes. So we do a lot of things to make this work work well with Kubernetes. So I believe it was 2018 or something. We have a conversation with Netflix, and we learned they have invented a very cool name, chaos engineering. So that we found that might be the good idea. That's actually what we have already done for years. So maybe we should, and at that time in the open source world, we haven't seen, a very good chaos engineering platform, especially for, optimized for Kubernetes. So that we decided to, extract all of these things we have built to create another name, which is Chaos Mesh, and donate it to cncf. But to be honest, PingCAP as the company, we don't have a lot of resource to invest in Chaos Mesh in the open source world. But I'm really happy that this project run very well by the community, which makes me very happy. That's it's all open source all about, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely the benefit. Obviously, I'm wearing the LF swag today in honor of Chris, but I've seen that in action with so many of the projects. Like, it's amazing when people come together and just, I think, I don't know if Jim Zemlin still uses the term. Our role was to provide a table where people can come together and just collaborate, right? I mean, it sounds simple, but for like companies like PingCAP is still relatively small. It allows us to punch above the weight, I think. So
you've in essence externalized some of your R&D costs by having the community pitch in and help for sure. And we actually, when I was at Twitter, we had a small saying where you can never always hire all the smartest people in the world. That is just truly impossible. But you could open source something, you convince those smart people to come contribute it, make it better, where you all stand to benefit. And I'm happy to hear that Chaos Mesh has kind of worked out and you've had people pitch in and help out. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I was just before like we got on the call, I was looking at dev stats to see how many contributions. I mean, you can see that for all the CNCF projects, right? If people want to see the metrics. And yeah, I mean, for Chaos Mesh, it had decent number of it's been pretty consistent, right? Which is cool. So yeah, and then I think you mentioned it at like 2017, 2018 timeframe. That's still early days of CNCF, right? I mean, now it looks like a no-brainer, but back then, I mean, we had the affinity to Kubernetes, I guess, but but I mean, great foresight, I guess that you had.
Yeah.
But,
it was one of our first Rust projects too, by the way. I'm pretty sure, right? Which is huge. Back then, that was a crazy thing. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
In the early days, I want to share a little bit about why I'm a big fan of Kubernetes, because Google is one thing. Another thing is I see, Kubernetes is like operating system for cloud. So I think, hey, if we have open source, we have a operating system, but what about the software? So basically, in the early days, we decided if we gonna build any software, we definitely need to consider it should be running on Kubernetes as the operating system. So that is a very nature decision for me to collaborating or adapting Kubernetes. So in the early days.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess we can shift gears and sort of look forward. We want to talk about cloud native trends, especially like this day and age where everybody seems to be talking about like AI or LLMs. And I read, I think you do this annually, Chris. You write a post about some of the top projects last year, not just in CNCF, but LF in general. And then I'll post a link to that blog post that people should read it, because you got like a charts with how different projects are moving along in the description. But why don't you tell us a little bit about like the purpose of the blog post and what you noticed last year?
Yeah, I do. I'm still refreshing a blog post for all of last year, which I'll be posted after some meetings. But some of the trends, obviously, that we're seeing is we've entered a new hype cycle in industry. AI is basically, everywhere, and we're seeing a lot of our projects kind of adapt, to this thing, right? Supporting, GPUs in a more direct, fashion. There's a lot of kind of features, coming out in Kubernetes, DRA, and a bunch of kind of call it batch scheduling related features and adjacent projects like Volcano and so on that are looking to kind of support these AI, use cases. So like when you'll see KubeCon next month in Paris, there will be an AI event, for sure. So that's kind of one of the big trends that like it almost encompasses every technology out there, right? Like we're seeing some of the CNCF projects kind of being used to hey, we've built a very sophisticated set of observability solutions in CNCF, open telemetry, all these things. And there's no reason that same technology cannot be applied to, observing and testing and, doing everything you need to do to an AI, model. I find a lot of the developer experience and stuff happening in AI is way behind what we now have in the cloud native world. Ed's talking about chaos mesh, fault injection, distributed failover, like all this stuff that we've built through all of our experience. Like these ideas are very, very new to the AI space. They're going to have to kind of figure out how to secure models, test them, observe them, like and what you're going to see is a lot of CNCF projects being repurposed or improved and fixed to kind of do that. Because at the end of the day, we're all we're underpinning a lot of this stuff anyway. And, Ed is kind of a database, data, little distributed system guys understands this, where it's like, oh, a lot of these databases now need to support vectors and searching. And this is happening. We're kind of seeing it, live before our eyes, that a lot of databases are now starting to support this. Not just like the new little ones that were born. It's like the big traditional ones, like what you have, the MySQL, Postgres of the world, are all heading this way. So I'd love to kind of maybe, I could kind of talk about the details, and we could kind of maybe talk a little bit of the AI, but I know on the database side, like it's changing. Like they're all going to support, I think, like vector embedding search. Like it's not a feature, I think, of a database. It's not the
Yes.
that's how I view it. But you're the domain expert on database. I'm just seeing the trend.
You made the right guess. I believe we just implemented vector search recently. It's I think to the major database vendor, especially if your database is the general purpose database like MySQL, Postgres. It is very to us it's very nature to introduce the embedding search, vector search feature like this that will extend the user scenario a lot today. So yeah, it's to us it's very, very nature decision.
So do you think that there's a market for kind of these kind of vector only? Like I'm just kind of curious of your perspective, because
today we have so many different kind of database that create a lot of confusion to the user. So to me, my guess will be the room for the specific vector database is quite small. Recently, a lot of new vector database very popular, making a lot of noise. But in the end, like 1 or 2 years later, I think that will still MongoDB, Cassandra, TiDB, Postgres, MySQL, things like that. That's still the old guys. Okay.
Yeah, we share similar sentiments. I like that. It's just you don't want to operate another thing where you could kind of reuse what you already have. I think the people are lazy at the end of the day. So
and actually the vector index or the technology behind that is not that complicated. A lot of tools already there, so that to us it is just an integration work. So yeah, it's not that hard. but building the database from scratch is hard. The database part is hard, but the vector part is not that hard compared to building a whole database.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you'd agree, because even within database, there are different like hype cycles. I mean, for a while, all they talked about was NoSQL, right? And then, people kind of forgot about MySQL and other traditional databases. But guess what? There's MySQL or Postgres isn't gone, right? So I don't know. Like, I don't know if you folks think we'll see something similar with vector features, but
actually, to me, it's a database question, so I will answer it first. I still see the trend. People are, the SQL still have the dominate, position in a lot of scenarios. But NoSQL database always have their best scenarios. So today, I'm not saying, hey, SQL is the only thing that will take over all the things, but I would say still this is a very diverse market, but I can see there is a trend that people still love SQL if you want to build some very complicated enterprise business logic. SQL is still the best thing you have. But if you want super scalable, your logic is not that complicated. You want faster speed, super extreme performance. Maybe key value is the NoSQL database is a good choice for you. So that depends. Yeah, basically.
And everyone in open source. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and today, but SQL database, in the early days, we don't have a lot of distributed SQL database in the market. But recent years, I can see the trend more and more, new distributed databases started to support SQL because, a lot of infrastructure and engineer are, database engineers, they can build SQL database now because there are a lot of example you can learn from, like Cockroach, Yugabytes, TiDB, things like this. Yeah. So.
I think all I was going to say is like what I've kind of noticed is, with all this great kind of open source technology and competition, people copy ideas from each other faster now than they had, before, in the old school, like on MySQL, whatever Postgres days, I think like, DB came around and Postgres copies ideas, like this natural thing just kind of happens, right? And I think it accelerates with open source. So my thing is like every major database by the end of this year is going to have decent support for, storing vectors. And it will. That'll be what happens is my take.
Right. Cool. Yeah. I think we can, like, not just cloud native or database, we can talk about, open source ecosystem in general. I think we may have talked about this, and I mentioned this at FOSDEM last week. I led a panel discussion about 2023, how difficult the year was especially for developers, not only on the job front, but there was a lot of debates about licensing. Companies that we thought were at the forefront of open source movement, they're making license changes, and it was really difficult. And I remember like middle of last year, like I started thinking about, is this a fundamental shift happening in the tech space, or is this just typical pendulum swing that you see in the high tech space? Like, wanted to get your thoughts on in general, like how things have changed since now we're into the new year, like what your thoughts are about open source in general, and especially with I think especially in AI, like you said, Chris, like changes are happening. It seems to be happening quicker than other hype cycles. But go ahead, Chris. But
I mean, maybe it's like you asked a couple things. Maybe I'll start with kind of the nature and change in open source and the job. Traditionally, open source has always done well in weird bad markets, right? Red Hat didn't have a bad quarter for forever, pretty much, and they both did well when times are good and then bad. And usually, when you're in recessionary environments, people look at redoing their tech stacks because they're looking to save money, or like it's just an opportunity. And open source generally excels at that because sometimes it is cheaper, or sometimes it's just simply better than what exists out there. So I think I haven't seen open source done fairly well, even though the job market's been a little bit funky with companies restructuring and so on. And some of this kind of constrained environment has caused some organizations to potentially relicense their technology, right? I was very close with the whole HashiCorp Terraform relicense situation, because I helped bring OpenTofu into the Linux foundation. But I think I think their judgment call was, well, we got all these people using our software, and we have a bunch of startups that are kind of building maybe better point solutions on top of Terraform. That doesn't feel fair. Let's go force their hands in some way, and they change a license. I think what they miscalculated when they made that decision is is the reaction of folks, where they're like, well, we're gonna go build our own thing, right? And I think it's the difference between a zero-sum mindset and a positive-sum mindset. I think HashiCorp was thinking zero-sum, like there's this pie, we want more of it, versus let's grow the pie for everyone and just take a smaller slice and maybe partner with our partners. And it's still too early to say how successful like OpenTofu may be and so on. They're obviously kind of growing their early stages. They finally have a registry and so on, but they've ignited quite a storm there. And what they've also done is broken trust with potentially some of their users and community members. Everyone that's written a Terraform extension now kind of questions a little bit what's going on there. There's a lot of we have a lot of members in the Linux Foundation, and what really didn't happen before is people didn't consider single vendor open source as necessarily a risk. Now it's not everyone, but there are some companies now that are like, well, if we're using this open source project and there's just kind of only one vendor involved, and it's not multi governance or open governance, then we could still use it, but like it's a risk now potentially. So that changed, like I've been doing this forever. That was never an issue for most companies, but this particular thing did it. And then I don't even know if you're aware, there's people working to fork Vault now, and it's called OpenBow, which OpenBow, which has IBM. And so like that small decision they made triggered, like it broke trust. It's caused other people to kind of evaluate. So we'll see if it works out for them. They're, obviously, you don't want to judge a company based on kind of the short term. And, I think it's going to take a year or two to shake out. But I think it was a short term move and mistake on their part. And there's not many companies doing this. There's so much open source out there. It's very, very few. I mean, we actually tried to count them in the Linux Foundation. I think we found maybe 20 use cases over the last decade where this was done. So it's a very small portion. And the last time this kind of happened, OpenSearch was born, right? AWS just it's like, all right, we're gonna go fork that thing. And OpenSearch is probably decently successful. It's successful enough, but Elastic still has a business. OpenSearch still has a project. I'd love your take on this.
I think OpenSearch, in the end, is like a weapon of AWS, but in the end, they are, shaking hand with Elasticsearch. So I think, I think in the end it is good. But to me, my biggest takeaway for these many years building open source, is don't fight with your community, so that don't hurt your community. To me, changing an open source license is a very, very big thing, and it's just not good. So to us, even though we build our business on top of our open source product, but we don't have any plan to change that, because it's the foundation of the trust. To us, the trust is very, very important. So it's my
Right.
attitude on this topic. But beside that, I also want to share some of my thought about open source and the AI, because I believe that AI will be very, very big in the might be the new driver for the whole open source movement, because in the early 2023, when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT, at that moment I was a little bit worried about the open source, because it is just like the magic. I a little bit afraid that, and use a lot of hardware, GPUs, so that you can build your own model. But in the middle of last year, I very happy to find that the open source community catch up in the very fast speed. And today, with the help of GitHub and Hugging Face, and I believe today, the open source Gen AI stack will is can reach the point that people can actually use this open source stack in their production environment. And for example, like Mistral 7B is basically comparable with GPT 3.5. And I actually use these kind of things to build some of my own personal softwares, and it just run perfectly. So I think that's why I really believe in the open source community. So yeah, this is one thing, the open source stack and open source Gen AI stack might become the de facto standard in the future. And the second thing I believe about the open source is today the API the how a developer interact with the Gen AI stack. This API today is defined by the OpenAI as the standard, but there are a lot of open source implementation that as the API server or gateway that could be very helpful to the open source community to build new model. So I think this OpenAI's API gateway could be the accelerator for all of this big language model or some other AI open source project. They could expose their capability via this set of good open source APIs. So I'm really glad that OpenAI open source all of this client side and the open API spec. So it is pretty awesome. Yeah, so that's my takeaway.
Democratization continues. So
yeah, exactly.
And you know what's funny? Which is funny. I'm sure you read it was like 8 months ago. There was the famous kind of memo out of Google, right? Like we have no moat, right? And open source will come for us. And if you go back 8-9 months ago, OpenAI, like the open source was very kind of very minor. It had a minor role to play, and it's been less than a year. And to your point, like Mistral 7B and like this stuff just constantly changes. It's already caught up. Quite a bit and accelerating in some ways. So truly amazing.
That's why I believe in open source. So always don't underestimate about the community.
Don't piss off your community. Don't piss off your community, because they will get together and OpenAI, like smart folks, but the naming still drives me crazy. Like it drives me insane.
Not really open.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much both for your time. And I mean, I feel like I didn't even have to be here. Like you two could have had a conversation. It would have been a perfectly good podcast. But so the last question we have on all of our episodes, this is our tradition. So we have, obviously, I mean, especially today, we have guests coming from very different time zones. So Chris, when you're not traveling or on an airplane, you live in Austin, Texas. So you're the second guest we have from Austin, which is a great city, one of my favorites. Tell us something about Austin, Texas that most people don't know about. Like,
It's like, yeah, it's like, where can I start? It's like,
yeah,
it's where The Office was filmed, Mike Judge. But
yeah,
no, I think the unique thing that we have really is we have the largest urban bat colony in the world. It's about 1.5 million Mexican free-tail bats that live under the Congress Bridge downtown that almost every night just stream out at sunset. It's a bit of a weird fact, but you know, it's why we don't have many mosquitoes and bugs, because I think the bats do a good good job there, and it's one of the things that people see when they come visit the city. So I always highly recommend it. So
yeah, I can attest to that. I was at a conference one time. This is very accessible from downtown Austin, by the
Yes.
way, for people who haven't been there. I thought, you know, the bats will come out and it'll be over in like a minute, but they kept coming
Yeah.
for like 10, 15 minutes. It was amazing.
yeah.
So, uh,
Yeah.
so
Good bug
Yeah.
eaters.
yeah. So Ed, I'll turn I'll turn things over to you. You live in the Bay Area for like 3 years
Yeah.
now. I can't remember. Like, so what do you like about the Bay Area? This is your new home, and what
Yeah.
are some of the secret tips that a lot of people don't know about? Like,
I think I will share something actually a lot of people have already known. You know,
yeah,
is you know, if you live in the US, maybe the Bay Area is the place you can get some really decent Chinese food and Chinese restaurant, and especially around Cupertino. And you know, I heard a lot of people say said in the early days in Bay Area, a lot of Cantonese restaurant, but today I
right.
think I can see the big trend that more and more different type of like Taiwanese, Hunan restaurant, and yeah, there's more different type of you know, Chinese food restaurant you can choose. So yeah, that's basically is I want to share about
Cool. Yeah,
good
yeah.
Chinese food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was complaining to somebody about I can attest to that Chinese food trend. It's become
Yeah.
harder to find dim sum restaurants in the Bay Area, which wasn't the case 20
Oh,
years ago. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
but if you want to find a good boba tea
Yeah.
place, then there are plenty of them.
oh
So
yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
positive. Go ahead,
There's
Yeah.
Chris.
I was like what was it like Din Tai Fung, right, is now, I think, exists now in California, where you get those little soup dumplings, which is
Oh,
pretty good.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's good.
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So so the Chinese food culture isn't
Yep.
static. So for those who don't know,
Mhm.
so well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining us, and Chris
Oh,
especially. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
What's up?
ahead.
What's up, Ed? What's up?
no. I think yeah, you can go first about
Yeah.
the rate. Yeah, you can go.
Yeah,
No,
I
no,
was
no.
going to say, I was going to thank Chris for joining. Like the KubeCon is not too far away in Europe, so I know things are very hectic before events. But Ed, go ahead and complete
No.
complete
I
your
just
thought.
I just want to
Yeah,
say about the KubeCon
Mhm.
2024, and
yeah,
I also really, you know, want to hear more information about that.
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick
yeah,
synopsis. So we're about you know, it's happening next month in Paris. You know, we're on basically track to sell out pretty soon. So we'll probably have a
yeah,
little over 13,000 people for what will be Europe's largest open source conference. You know, we're going to cover a lot of kind of future things around, you know, what's the intersection of cloud native AI. We have a security hub, we have an AI hub. So I'm
yeah,
very excited about the event. It's become a lot for us to put on, because, you know, and Ed will remember when
yeah,
CNCF used to be pretty small. Like KubeCon used to be, you know, a few
Yeah.
hundred people, 500 people, and now we literally run the world's largest open source you know,
Yes.
conference in well, sorry, Europe's largest open source conference. For sure.
cool,
So it's quite crazy.
awesome.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I still remember
Yeah.
last year I think the KubeCon
Amsterdam,
Europe was in
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. Yes,
Yep.
yeah. I have a really good time there. So
yeah,
wow, really looking
Beautiful.
forward to yes.
Yeah.
Good
And
city.
that was also sold out, by the way. And we had a wait
yeah,
list of like
Yeah.
1,500 people. And it's just very hard to plan these things. People don't realize, like, we're already planning like 3 years in advance. These things are planned
right.
2-3 years out. And it's hard to
Wow.
predict attendance and
with
COVID
the amount
also
of,
was weird. Was tough.
Yeah, with the amount of people, the securing venue alone, it's logistically very challenging.
But,
that's why you need to plan years away, years out.
And people don't realize that we're a team about 30, 40 people on the events team that plans not only like all the KubeCons, all the Cube days. So we're a small but scrappy team on it's like startup life.
Wow.
Cool.
Thank you.
I'll add the link to the
KubeCon
Paris site as well, where people can register.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you both. I'm sure I'll run into both of you at some open source conference somewhere. So
awesome.
Cool.
Definitely.
All right, glad to be here. Good to see you, Ed, and thanks for waking up early.
No, not a big problem. Bye. Thank you.